Thanks very much, Adrienne. I do have some external relationships I should declare. But look, it's a pleasure to be here today. Great to represent Fortescue and to just give you a little bit of an insight into our company and how we think about energy. Really looking forward to this. Thanks very much to Adrienne and the organisers. Thanks to our sponsors for making this possible. Much appreciated. So in terms of our company, Fortescue Metals Group, I'll just give you a quick overview of who we are, where we're at as a business, and then I'm just going to talk a little bit about energy. I might truncate my remarks slightly on the basis that these conferences are all about you, the delegates, and it's important that we get to that question and answer session with all the panellists, because I know you're all dying to grill all the panellists. If you don't have any questions for me, I won't be too sad, but I'm sure you've got heaps for Eva and Melanie. So we'll get straight onto that. Before I get into the presentation, I will give you 10 minutes to read this. But I could just summarise it for you quickly in saying that don't rely on anything I say in terms of making investment decisions. Please seek appropriate advice. So look, Fortescue as a company, oops, went too far, I think. No. So Fortescue as a company, founded in 2003, mined our first iron ore in 2008. So we're a very young company, West Australian, born and bred, and we were developed with the express purpose of meeting demand for iron ore in China. So you'll see on the map there our two main operating hubs, the Solomon Hub, the Chichester Hub, and rail network linking us to our Herb Elliott port in Port Hedland. So we're now producing around 165 to 170 million tonnes per annum. That's sort of our full run rate, if you like. We might have some stretch capacity above that, but we're happy with where we are at the moment. And so that's our focus going forward. Our focus as a business is really on productivity and efficiency at this point. So the history of our development, we started with the Cloudbreak mine in the Chichesters in 2008, quickly expanded to Christmas Creek, starting in 2009. I think first production there was in 2010. And then the Solomon Hub was our most recent development. Now, energy in the Pilbara is an interesting situation in that, our first operations were built on diesel for stationary power gen, and of course the transport task is diesel. The Solomon Hub, we took a bet on gas, and so we've got a very large gas-fired power station there, very efficient, and we were initially running that on diesel. We've built a gas pipeline from the coast near Karratha, 250 kilometres into that mine to enable us to take advantage of gas. So we've had the gas on there for a couple of years now, and that's making a big difference in our costs, but also in our greenhouse emissions. And as well as that, we've been studying renewable energy in quite a lot of detail for at least the last 5 or 6 years. So we've got, as you would imagine, and as many of you would know, the world's best solar resource in the northwest, certainly Australia's best solar resource, but arguably the world's best. So we've done some pilot studies around that. We've done some pilot studies on wind power. We've got a world-class wind resource at Solomon as well. So we think we've got a good handle on what we've got there, what the opportunities are in the future. And in the presentation today, I'll just talk a little bit more about Fortescue, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we think that the renewables in the Pilbara can really be enabled. Surprisingly, it's, in our view, a gas story. We think gas is the best friend of the renewable energy sector. So just a quick snapshot on where Fortescue sits in terms of the global cost curve for iron ore production. If you look at the 2012 stack, which is sort of faded behind the main stack, that was the picture in 2012. So we were the higher cost producer of the big four. and this is on a China-delivered basis. So since 2012, as I said, we've brought on the Solomon operation. We've been on a journey of really enhancing our productivity and efficiency, and you can see the outcome here in the 2016 cost curve, which shows Fortescue moving to the bottom of the cost curve as the lowest cost iron ore producer on a shipped basis to China. So that's obviously extremely important in a challenging environment, which iron ore has been over the past couple of years, to make sure that we're really focusing on that productivity and efficiency in a sustainable way. Look, the other key focus for Fortescue, of course, is building stronger communities. So we think about everything we do through this prism. We have a focus on contributing to ending Aboriginal disparity in the Pilbara. So that is enabled through our own in-house developed training program called the VTEC program, which has now been picked up as a model by the federal government and has been rolled out nationwide. So you'll see that VTEC brand everywhere. It doesn't mean that Fortescue's everywhere yet, although we might have ambitions. We still run our own VTECs in Port Hedland and Roban, but we've trained something like 1,500 Aboriginal people. Aboriginal employment at Fortescue is around 1,300, so representing over 15% of the workforce now. So we think we've really demonstrated the power of thinking differently about how we approach issues, whether it's community engagement or other challenges and opportunities in the mining sector. So look, in terms of thinking about energy, our view is that gas is the critical transition fuel, and the basis for that is really that we see gas as a perfect partner for renewables. Gas is a lower cost option than diesel. We certainly achieve good environmental outcomes in switching to gas. The challenge we have is around gas availability and the certainty of gas supply going forward. Gas is a critical part of ensuring that we can further develop the Northwest interconnected system. So we've got this thing in the Pilbara called the NWIS, and the word interconnected in there is an interesting euphemism in that the system's not actually interconnected. So we've got a real challenge up there. So what that leads to, of course, is a situation where you've got massive capital investments having been made on a sort of legacy basis into power generation capacity. It's mostly islanded, and to the extent that it's not islanded, it's proprietarily owned and held and not shared. And so you've really got a situation where there's a high barrier to entry from an energy perspective, but there's also real problems in terms of the efficiency of that capital allocation. So we think that puts a bit of a dead hand on future investment. If we can unlock that as an industry and ensure that we get better utilisation, better efficiency in the capital that's already been deployed, that will help unlock new investment and speed up, in fact, the integration of renewables into those systems. So just to give you a number, I think, and actually there's lots of Fortescue people here today, so someone will correct me if I get this number wrong, but there's something like 1,900 megawatts of installed power generation capacity in the Pilbara. So on a daily basis, demand is around 900 or so, Lee. Yeah, Lee's nodding, so that's good. So you think about that in terms of the amount of capital that's been inefficiently allocated, and then you get a sense of the problem. So when we think about deploying new capital, the very first question is, well, how well did you do with the last capital we gave you to deploy, and how's that been utilised? And how are we going to improve that going forward? So that's a real challenge for our industry. I agree with Eva when he said that energy should be a pre-competitive space, We'd certainly like to think so. We think there's real value as an industry in us all cooperating on energy going forward, because that will really speed, in our view, the transition. So our view is if we can get to a situation where there's a proper grid in the Pilbara, a real interconnected and integrated system maybe in the truest sense of those words, then that will really accelerate renewables. And certainly renewables are happening. As I said, we're studying them closely. There are certainly immediate applications for renewables, whether that's in brownfield situations or greenfield developments. But our view is that you really need the grid to speed that up. So look, I've only got a few minutes remaining, so this is just a snapshot of our energy costs as a part of our total C1 cost, or the cost of production, just to give you an idea of our sensitivity to energy. So you can see that there's a very significant task there, both in terms of stationary power generation but also the mining fleet. We're actively thinking about that mining fleet as well, but the stationary power generation task is very large. For Fortescue in particular, because we beneficiate something like 85 to 90% of our iron ore through complex and sophisticated wet processing facilities. That's to allow us to mine in the pit a lower grade of ore and then upgrade that ore through the processing to produce an average marketed iron ore grade across our product suite of around 58%. So I might just flick ahead to the final slide, which is really about, again, this focus on how do we ensure that we get the settings right to enable future investment. It is about, as I said, it is about gas. We do have concerns about the security of gas supply going forward. The Australian Energy Market Operators 2016 Gas Statement of Opportunities for Western Australia highlighted the fact that gas reserves tied to existing domestic gas plants have a very short life, and so there is a possibility of undersupply into the WA domestic gas market from the early to mid 2020s. We think that's a real concern for this story and for the ability to integrate the grid. So we're keen to see enough policy pressure on ensuring that the gas industry continues to develop to its full potential as a domestic energy supplier as well as export. And for that reason, we're very focused on ensuring that gas tenements are the subject of a tough use it or lose it retention lease policy approach. So you'll hear us talk about that. What I'd like to leave with you today is really just again our view that the reason I'm talking about gas is because we do think that penetration of gas is important to the penetration of renewables. Thanks very much.